All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This is kind of like the last guest speaker for this semester. Next week is going to be kind of a short chapter lecture, and then just some sort of cleanup stuff on the Thursday class. Just FYI, on the Thursday class next week, somebody reached out to me, I think from UH, wanting to share with all of you opportunity through something called I think it's the Good Jobs Challenge. And so it's a program that if you want to get some um, credits on some courses that help to position for some internships, this might be a program to check out. So they wanted some time, and I offered them, next week Thursday to do a presentation. So next week is probably more for you all to kind of prepare for your respective finals and stuff. And like I said, I'll get the rest of the surveys done. But this is going to be kind of like the last formal week of the chapter as well as the lecture. In fact, this last set of quizzes for this chapter 14 is the last set of quizzes. There's no set of quizzes for chapter 15. Chapter 15 is just kind of like a real summary. So anyway, that's what's happening over the course of the this week and the next week. And so this particular class, I wanted to give you a chance to hear from another colleague, buddy of mine, Nathan Hokama. We've known each other for a while. He he has been in the business of PR, public relations. Now we've had some folks come on and talk a little bit about the work that they do, like Chantel from Crystal, and we had Melissa Chang. She's also with Crystal, and Nathan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Crystal Communications, they do a pretty wide range of offerings, everything from website development to SEO and as well as PR. Whereas Nathan is more into the sort of strategic communications. And Nathan, I'll give you a chance to clarify if I make any misclaims, but I thought strategic communications would be an important topic to talk about because it's one thing to get out there and kind of promote your business or promote your service through social media. It's another thing to also figure out, you're putting out press releases, but then the media might pick up on your particular company or your particular industry. And oftentimes, there may be requirement for a more strategic approach to communicating and letting people know what it is that you are actually in business doing. And so Nathan's company is, I think, more in line with some of that strategic communications. So with that, Nathan, I want to give you a chance to kind of clarify anything I might have misspoke, or if you wanted to add to that introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Bert. First of all, good to see all of you. I'm glad to be able to share what I know with all of you. First of all, I wanted to let you know that I put my name and my company name in the chat. So at least you get that
Now,
part.
why did you do that? Why for what reason did you do that for?
I want to make sure everybody here gets an A on this last quiz. And so I saw this as a talk story session, but Bert, I found my slides from last year. So
Okay, good. Okay,
I can
okay.
use that
I
as
think
a
you're still
presentation.
valid. Yeah.
Yeah. But before I start, I wanted to get a feel of how many of you are pursuing public relations careers. You can put a hand in the graphic or whatever you want to do. Anybody? Nobody? Okay. So what are, oh, Chloe Martin, thank you. And Tessa, thank you. Good. So, oh, and Stella,
Wow,
great.
you're getting some response,
Yeah,
Nathan. That's good. That's a good indication.
yeah, because my background is public relations, as Bert said, and I started my business 20 years ago. 2024 last year was my 20th year on my own. Prior to that, I was in-house in corporate communications. I was at Tesoro, and I worked at American Savings Bank in corporate communications. And then I was a journalism major at the UH. I majored in journalism and philosophy because back then you had to have a minor if you majored in journalism. And I know they don't have journalism anymore, but it's kind of combined with communications. So
Well,
things
they
have,
still have they have journalism classes. There's a,
but
you
not
know,
a major,
if,
right?
oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe somebody can correct. Is there a journalism major?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
No, it's not. Anyway, so I wanted to walk you through some of the sort of how public relations has changed over the years and also how computer-aided communication is being used today in the real practice of public relations. So I'm going to start with my slides, if I can share. Can everybody see this?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay, so I'll put it on the slideshow mode. So I want to talk about computer-aided public relations for your class, and I wanted to start off with the role of the professional, communications professional. So often we've heard that, we want to move from a tactician. A tactician is somebody who, I want to say at the lower end of the spectrum in terms of the career. It's somebody who can, write a press release, somebody who can, um, you know, put, knows how to put, it's more of a mechanical function. Whereas the strategist is someone who thinks through how are they going to create the message that will resonate with the audience, or how are we going to influence a particular key stakeholder? So that's the real difference between a tactician and a strategist. And I see that has always been important in the role of public relations professionals, moving from a tactician. Usually, entry level people are tacticians, and they graduate into becoming a strategist, where you're counseling clients, counseling CEOs or leaders about how to communicate their message. And I know Bert said, I do strategic communications, but really, when you think about it, all communications should be strategic. So that's really important to point out, no matter what kind of client you're working with or what kind of organization you're working with, all communication is strategic. So the next one is um, defining the organizational challenge. Before it used to be, um, what do you want me to write? But now the questions become, how shall we say it? And what shall we say? And then what shall we do? So you can see the evolution. Um, you know, long time ago, public relations professionals were viewed as more tacticians, and also for those who are entry level. So it's more about uh, what shall we say? And then maybe as you graduate, it's like, okay, so how should we say this? And then finally, it's more like, what should we do? Should we even issue a press release? Is that the right thing to do? Should we call a press conference? Is it the right thing to engage with social media? Um, so those are the kinds of sort of the kind of thinking processes that people go through on the organizational side. Any questions on that so far, Christian? Okay, I'll move on. So some of the skills and qualities that, when you're graduating and you want to pursue a career in communications, first of all, you have to have really good communication skills, and that involves storytelling. So I think that's become much more important today, storytelling, because it's not enough just to communicate facts and figures. You have to put it into a context that people can really relate to. And then, of course, superior writing skills, and then understanding of the media, how the media works, and not just traditional media with broadcast, print, and radio, but also online sources and digital media. They all have different rules of engagement. And so understanding how the media, um, how they work is really important for public relations. And of course, a working knowledge of social media. When social media first entered the picture, people thought, well, this is going to be a game-changing thing. It is and it isn't, because ultimately it's going to come down to your role as a strategist. So social media is just another channel of communication, and whether it's a newspaper article, a TV news story, or a social media post, or an e-newsletter, all of that are just channels. Ultimately, you have to own the strategy, you have to own the messaging. And that's why I don't think we have to worry too much about AI. There will always be a need for humans. And what I mean by that is you have to be able to assess the situation, because AI can't do that for you. You can feed AI the information that you observe, but they're not going to be able to assess the situation for you. They can't read the room because they're not there with you. They're not aware of the personalities involved or the political climate. And every environment has a political climate, not just the legislature or government. And then from all of that information, you're going to come up with a strategy on how to communicate. So again, I want to really emphasize that for right now, AI cannot do those things. It's up to the human beings to give them that information. And so that's why it's a nice partnership, which I want to talk about. I don't think I have it on here, but and these are the different ways to use your skills in different areas. Internal communications, meaning you're communicating with employees, and then reputation and brand management, which is the overall organization's reputation in the community or in a region. Issues management, where you know that there's an emerging issue on the horizon and you're trying to get ahead of it. So maybe you're positioning the organization to be ready to mitigate the impact, or you're trying to preempt that from even happening. That's issues management. Crisis communications, when something happens and it affects the operations, it could affect the financial well-being of an organization, or it could even impact the reputation. That's crisis communications, and that's really important to have a really robust ability to write quickly, use AI when necessary, and that's really important. And of course, media relations, and the part I think that is we don't talk enough about is the judgment. That only comes over time, from being exposed to different circumstances, gaining the judgment and the counseling skills so that you can really help somebody navigate through very difficult or challenging um, problems within their organization. That could be a nonprofit, it could be um, a corporation, it could be in a trade association, it could be a government agency. All of those types of organizations require good communications. And again, the role of the human, the professional, is really important in this. Anybody have any questions?
Nathan, yeah, that last point,
Uh-huh.
and even the previous slide, you know, for the students in the class as
Mhm.
they enter into this area, this field,
Mhm.
it seems pretty obvious that you need to have a good set of years of experience in order to have this kind of buildup of skill and knowledge and experience in order to respond in a strategic way. So I would, I guess my question to you is, what would you recommend
Mhm.
students who are in the class do in order for them to gain this? Because this is obviously not something that you can get a degree and then all of a sudden come out and say, here I am, I'm all into strategic communications.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, it takes time to develop that career. And so initially you might be doing some, basic news release writing or, copywriting. And don't see that as don't diminish the importance of that. It's important to have good writing skills. Even if, and I wouldn't recommend that you not over rely on AI. Really learn how to write well, so that when you do engage with AI tools, and I want to see, I just was in a seminar this morning where they said you engage with AI, and it was about grant writing, but you engage AI as a partner. So you have a conversation, like some of you are probably familiar with Chat GPT. You ask questions, and then they say, "Would you like it to be shorter or longer, or what tone would you like it? Would you like it a friendlier tone?" You need to be the one guiding the AI conversation, and so by building the skills on your own, not not relying on AI, you can become a better collaborator so that the end product that you get from AI will be much, much better. And I did that recently where I wrote a press release, I wrote a media advisory, and this is for an event involving the mayor. And they needed a speech, so the remarks for the MC for the event on that day. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try this. I'm going to put the news release, I'm going to put the media advisory into Chat GP, GPT and see what happens. I'm going to say, turn this into a speech. And so I just uploaded my content and I pressed the return and boom, it was like aloha kako, like wow, I was really surprised. And it wasn't 100% accurate, which is another thing about AI. You gotta realize that it's not gonna be perfect. So that's where you really gotta you have to be the arbiter of what's right. You still have to use good judgment. Some of it might not be accurate. So you still have to review it and evaluate it. And I guess what I want to say to answer your question, Bert, is take the time to develop this foundational skills because that's going to help you in the long run. And no matter what AI does and how it evolves, you need that basic skills so that you can work with AI, whatever way it's going to change. And that to me makes you more resilient. It doesn't, when people go, "Oh my gosh, AI is going to take our jobs away." I don't see that. I see that it's going to maybe shape your job differently, but it's never going to take your job away because just like a long time ago, probably before many of you were born, they say, "Oh no, computers are going to take away our jobs, or computers are going to give us so much free time that we won't know what to do with ourselves." And that's not true, right? It's just actually just the opposite. Computers being more accessible and mobile devices have made us more connected and has actually given us less time. And now we're doing 24/7 work instead of, 3 days a they thought, oh, computers are going to allow us to work 3 days a week instead of five. And actually now it's 24/7 now. So just the opposite has happened. So I
So,
think,
so,
yeah,
so Nathan, you bring up an interesting point. So I would definitely agree that in this day and age, 2025,
yeah,
there's so much stuff that people have to do that the benefit of what you just described in terms of putting some information into a chat GPT and having it write the press release or write the speech, you could, in fact, somebody was telling me today, they did something and they were able to generate a result within seconds as opposed to having to work it over the course of maybe hours. And you know, your recommendation to the class, I think, is good. But the thing that people need to consider is that in order for you to build skill in writing, you actually have to write, and you have to write without this, let's say, AI tool helping it go faster, because there's always going to be the inclination that you want to do it fast because there's all this information that's inundating you, and you need to do it. You need to do it fast. The benefit of people like Nathan and I in the generation that we grew up in is that everybody had to write the same way. They had to, pull it out of their brain. And so they had to work on it, right? And you're working on your writing style depends on what it is that you might have read. I remember in high school, being assigned reading all these books and stuff like that. And, you read and then you kind of get a sense as to the language and how you might craft something if you were to write it, because you're doing these book reports or whatever, right? And there's no chat GPT back in those days. So, I guess the juxtaposition that I'm trying to, explain is that in order to build skill, you need to give yourself time, and you need to give it enough time so that you can develop a skill or develop a style. But we're so, I think, inundated in this 21st century that we are more inclined to be sort of short attention span, gotta move on, gotta get it done, and you forego the time your brain needs to actually develop a style. So I just wanted to put that out there, and if you had any response to that, or if any of the class has a response to that, I'm saying that the class has a challenging environment to work in, because they're all going to be challenged with the time element. And in order for anybody to build style, they're going to have to actually spend time doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There will be that pressure to maybe you get a job and and your boss says, "Why are you spending time writing for? Just put it through AI and get it done." Um, and I think you almost have to invest in yourself separately from that, so that you do get the skills that you need. It's just like even with reading, right? You can read the article, and reading is part of the learning process. It's making you think. Same with writing, it's a way of thinking. How are we going to structure this story? It's easy to push the button and out it comes. Same with reading, instead of reading the long article, you could just say, give me a summary of this in 2 paragraphs. And then you can circumvent that process of pouring through the details of the article. And what does that really do though? I think it almost diminishes uh your ability to fully develop, all the skills. And you have to remember that AI it's only as good as what it is fed. So the more you can feed it good information, and you can detect what is good writing, what would make a good reading art, what would make a good article, you have to know that. Otherwise, it's just regurgitating what's out there. And so it's important that you, again, be the owner of this content that you're creating. So there will always be a role for humans who are committed to being humans.
I'm curious to hear any student comment on the situation that you guys have to live through.
I mean,
I think it's definitely an interesting time right now, but I'm about to graduate, so I feel like it missed me in a good way, where I feel like I have developed all these skills by myself without the use of AI. And I think reflecting on like younger people in college or even in elementary schools, it's even scarier to think what they're going through right now because they have such easy access to it. And If they're not taught how to use it effectively, then it can be damaging for them in the long run. But for me, I feel like the jobs I've worked so far and what I've learned so far has like just missed being affected um by AI, or else I feel like I'd probably want to rely on it a little more. Um, I mean, I always think about how in math class in high school I would have loved to have that. But I also wouldn't have like learned any of it or been able to actually apply it. So I feel like in a good way that like I'm about to go out into the job market and look for a job. I feel confident in knowing that like I'm able to use it um effectively, I think, but also not rely on it fully.
No, thanks. Good input.
Yeah, yeah, Julia, that's a good. You had some good insights about how to use AI effectively and not to misuse it because this can be easily misused. Yeah, and I think,
Yeah.
some of these issues are being grappled with even with UH faculty. I work with UHPA and they are trying to come up with policies regarding AI because you can put into whatever software you use, create a syllabus for my course, and boom, out it comes. Create the syllabus for this computer aided communication skills, course, and then boom, out it comes. You don't have to think. Um, but it takes away the role of the faculty member, right? It kind of diminishes it. Same for the students. When Chat GPT first came out, people were like, "Oh my gosh, but we're worried about plagiarism and the ethical dimensions of AI." But that's just a tiny part of they focus on that part and so, you heard teachers saying, we're adamantly against AI, we're going to ban it. So that was one end of the spectrum. But I think the more progressive people are looking at it differently. They're saying it's real, it's here. And so how do we embrace that? And how do we use it strategically, or how do we use it so that it actually helps the students rather than pretend it's not there? Yeah, and that's what AI is in general, right? It can certainly be abused and misused, but if we use it in the proper way and make our lives easier, doesn't compromise our professionalism, then I think, that's something we always going to have to grapple with. So it's not going to be a easy answer all the time. Yeah.
May, may I ask a question? I'm sorry. Um, in writing, people gotta be able to read the things and, good writing. Uh, can can pe can you use like Canva to show more or less by illustration or a graph or something to make it simple instead of writing because
Sure.
it's picture is better than reading something. Yeah.
Right.
So do
Yeah,
you
Canva
have
is excellent. Jim, Canva is an excellent tool. It's very easy to use. It's easier to use than InDesign. Um, and I've used it myself. And I think, yes, pictures do tell it, worth a thousand words. And so, especially if we're trying to communicate difficult information or challenging information, naturally an image or illustration is better. Ultimately, though, what you have to keep in mind is that you would be the one sort of guiding that Canva process, right? You have to know what you're trying to communicate. What is the best way to communicate this message through this illustration? Or is it a chart? Is it a pie chart or is it a bar chart? Or is it some kind of other infographic? So that's where the human thinking process goes into even Canva.
it, can Canva provide pictures or mainly like some illustration that they create?
I think it can create some, but there's a way you can import images into the Canva.
Yeah.
like photos or use a stock photo library, and it can stock photo even now can be AI manipulated, right? So there's much more latitude in what you communicate and how
Yeah.
you
So you have to have understand or how to work different kind of tools. The more you know about different tools will
yeah, I
help
would,
you more. You know?
and I would agree definitely that's true. But I think keep in mind that the tools will always change. The tools will evolve. What doesn't change is how we think and how humans
Mhm.
interact with information. So over the years with social media, people have shorter attention spans, right? They don't have the patience to read long articles anymore.
Yes,
They
I'm
don't.
on.
Uh, they want information. Just give me the high points. They're not necessarily interested in diving deeply into an issue, which is good and bad. It's bad because maybe we don't have that kind of robust discussion in civic engagement anymore. They just want the easy answers. Tell me what I need to know. Okay, bye. But so I think that doesn't mean that we have to, even though we turn out information that is simplified and easy to understand, that doesn't mean that we also take that same approach in how we think through our communications.
Okay.
We still have to go through the rigorous process of what is it that we're trying to say, and then okay, we're going to simplify that down for what people need and how they want to receive it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
You mentioned channels earlier and like social media being one of them. Is there one specific channel right now that you think is the most effective for PR?
I tend to gravitate toward Facebook or Instagram. Yeah, for that. And even with that, I think sometimes in conversations in a workplace, they go, "Oh, we should get into social media. Let's hire somebody young who can deal with this," right? And I want to say that the social media person has to be just as strategic as anybody else on the team, uh, because it's just again, it's just a channel. Um, and also because the role of social media is engagement, it's not just a one-way push out. Sometimes people just push out information, but they don't engage. And if you don't respond back to a post, then it's not you're not that's not social media. That's just something else. You're not taking advantage of the medium that really cultivates relationships, has to encourage conversations and things like that. And sometimes the person managing that has to really understand what they're promoting, what the company or organizational positions are. So they have to be strategic in their own way too, right? And if it takes too long to respond, then it doesn't feel spontaneous. It doesn't feel like social media. Because they can't go, oh, let me go run and find out the answer each time that happens. But the role of social media, even in crisis communications, is really, really important because that's where people get their information from today. So in a crisis, there are teams that monitor social media, and they're looking at the statistics though. So if somebody posts something, but they don't have a lot of followers, they don't have a lot of likes, they're probably not going to pay as much attention as somebody who has a lot of followers, right? Because they have more influence. So that's a really, really drilled down kinds of tools for managing crises too. Kind of, taste, yeah, okay. So these are some other sort of soft skills that's really important for communications. Um, so communications is one of the many functions within an organization, and it has to be integrated with the other functions, human resources, finance, sales, other types of other types of functions. And when you can be viewed as an equal partner with those other functions and not subordinate, then that's where you want to be. And so that requires really being, a keen observer of what's happening in the workplace, what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening in the community. That's really important because then you feed that and you become the conduit of the community to your decision makers, and you become one of the decision makers yourself. Ding dong. Um, and then I need of above average and emotional intelligence. And what I mean by that is you really have to be a good people reader. You have to really know how people think, how they feel, anticipate what they're going to think and feel, and be able to respond to that. At the same time, you have to have the other side of the brain, the analytical, reasoning, critical thinking part, and then bringing it all together with problem solving. So you become the convener of people to bring solutions for whatever the challenge might be. So this is the current landscape. The old school way was two-way communications, right? We put something out and somebody responds back. That doesn't really exist anymore. It's more like you put something out and multiple people respond back. And then when you respond back, it goes back to multiple people too. So that's really changed. And then democratized communication. So everybody is a citizen journalist. Um, and they can incorporate that into news stories. Um, anybody who with a phone can can record what's happened, and they send that to the TV stations and it becomes news. So basically we have empowered citizens, everybody, to become journalists, whether you have a journalism degree or not. They may not have the same integrity standards, but that doesn't matter. And of course, more proliferation of social media. So it's a much more empowering medium. Everybody can say what they need to say. It's like you wouldn't know this also. Desktop publishing, when that first emerged, everybody became a publisher overnight. Whether they could write or not, whether they had anything important to say, if you could put out a newsletter, you were somehow a publisher because of the tools. Same with social media. With social media now, everybody has a platform to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And then also in this current landscape, speed is really important, because if you don't, like I said, if you don't respond, then you're either MIA or you're not there, you're not engaged. So speed is really, really important. In a crisis situation, already, if you're not responding to the media, then you're viewed as being evasive or you have something to hide. Um, so even more now with the multiple mediums or at channels, avenues, that's even more critical. And there's more newscasts, right? They have a 4 o'clock newscast, 5 o'clock. That didn't exist before. It was just like 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and that was it. Now they have all these other time slots. And it's really driven by revenue generation, right? You can create more advertising revenue if you have more newscasts. It doesn't mean you have more news, just more newscasts. So some of the tools here are to as a way to use the tools is to build allies in the community. Is basic one might be like crowdfunding. That's a perfect example of how the tools are used. There's an expectation of engagement, so that's one of the things to be aware of. And there are collaboration tools like Google Docs, basic things like that, artificial intelligence, and then integration of AI into tools like MailChimp. So in MailChimp, you can say, there's a way that you can say, can you rewrite this? Do you want us to rewrite this headline or subject line? So things like that. That was it. Any questions you have?
I
Can you
got
go
a
back to that last one? Oh, go ahead, Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
um, I'm not on social media. I'm sure a lot of people are in my generation are not on social media, so I rely on the newspaper a lot. And journalism, as it was, I guess, during my time, before you print, you got to do your research, right? And whatever you print is, is backed up. Now, social media now, you don't have to do that. You just put something out.
Yeah.
And maybe it's good. That's why I stay away from social media. You can be bombarded, with some other things that are not true and might blow your mind away. Yeah. So,
That's true.
I,
And, and that's why I feel like even though people say newspapers are not as relevant today, I feel it is. Even if you get the newspaper online, like the Star Advertiser, for example, it's the credibility of the news organization, the integrity of the reporters that's important. Even like op-eds, which are published in the Star Advertiser, the opinion pieces,
yeah.
people might say, well, who's going to read that? People don't read that. But the people who matter do read that. It's the legislators, it's the people who are making policy decisions. So it is still a very important vehicle. And I don't think we should ever discount the role of professional journalists. There will be the citizen journalists with the social media. They don't have to check the facts. They don't even have to care if what they're saying is actually true. It's just their perception. They don't need to verify what they're saying. And so they have a totally different standard from, what we consider journalism.
Mhm. Mhm. And on the national level, the big guns, like I think Wall Street is going to sue Pentagon or something like that. Where um, I guess they when they don't agree with what was printed and they know for sure that was false information, they would sue. And you got a lot of well, not too many now, but uh, you see that happening on the bigger scale. But I don't know about you cannot relate that with social media. I guess it's free for all then.
You don't hear too much about libel.
Yeah,
Cases. You
maybe
hear
they
about,
should.
you do hear about fake news, right? Under the Trump administration, much more fake news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess a long time ago, there was a reporter on one of the station. He mentioned somebody was the godfather of crime. You remember that? And then that person sued that reporter,
Mm.
and eventually that reporter left town.
Yeah.
But that case never came out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you something, Nathan. Uh, with all the sources, and to kind of like Jim's point, staying away from social media, you know, as students enter into this field of communications, what would you advise them to do to be discerning with what might be true and what might be false, and how would you kind of grapple with just the volume of stuff
Hmm.
that could be misleading? And I'll give you an example. I mean, not to be political or anything, but that whole thing about the Venezuela, um, um, bombing of the boats, right? Shooting down, shooting the boats, and then there's this whole discussion going on about uh, who gave the order to, kill the survivors, and you're seeing it kind of play out in the media right now, and it's hard to, you can't believe one side per se, because now they're sort of in the mode of covering it up, right? What is it that you would advise? Do you just sort of watch it unfold in front of you, and let history sort of arrive at what the right right story is, or you let the courts decide? Or, what you know it's just so, we're seeing all of this happen in front of us, and do we even want to take a stand?
Yeah, I think well, first of all, I think there will always be a need for credible news sources. And so, in terms of trying to seek what is the actual truth about these kinds of circumstances, it's good to turn to those sources as a starting point, because you can't rely on what you get in your feed or social media feed, because it may not be accurate. It's going to be somebody's opinion. Um, and even with that, people are, you know, we know that the kind of information you get fed to you is based on an algorithm. So if they already know how you think and what you believe, you're gonna attract that kind of same kind of information, and it's living in the echo chamber, right? It's just gonna feed what you believe, based on your algorithm. That's how it
Hmm.
works.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
unfortunate because then it doesn't open your mind up to look at the other sources of information. So if, for example, if you're a Trump fan and you search all those sites that talk about how wonderful federal policies are under the Trump administration, you're going to get more of that, and you're going to believe it, and that's going to be your world, right? You're going to define your world in that way. Um, so that's why it's really important to, turn to those more progressive sources, not progressive sources, but other sources that you can, more rely on. It's the mainstream ones and the um, other ones like um, pro publica, things like that, where they do the investigation, and they try to find out what is really the story under the story.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, but then also as a communications practitioner, you do have to know what the social media was is saying there too, because that helps you to understand the landscape, right? So even if it's not true, you can say, okay, this is what is happening in the social media realm. And if you're trying to influence that, you need to be aware of what that circle is saying. And I
Yeah.
can give an example, and then when the United Healthcare executive was shot because not him, but the company was denying prior authorizations for medical care, right? You saw how the reaction was like people, oh, good, I'm glad that he got killed. So that's the sentiment, right? It's good to understand that because then you can be aware that, wow, this is a big change. People would normally say condemn that kind of behavior, right? We don't kill people just because, we don't agree with them. But here for the first time, we saw people saying, "Yeah, good," you know, the health, all of those people are evil and they should be, I don't know, annihilated. So, so it's a different, and company locally that I was working with was watching the way that people were responding on social media, and they took it very seriously because there were implications that, that could happen locally too.
Yeah, it is sort of scary when these sort of radical actions start to get not normalized, but uh, they sort of get sanitized and become part of the dialogue, right? The public dialogue, and and that's why it gets crazy when when you have a president saying, remember the six senators that came out and said that the military doesn't have to follow illegal orders, and he said that's like was it sedition or punishable by death? So those kinds of things can trigger somebody that's already kind of erratic or radicalized,
Yeah.
and they might take action, right? So that's the scary part. But that's the that's the age we live in.
Yeah.
This stuff is being said all the time now.
Yeah, like you said, the radical behavior is normalized, and not only normalizes, sanctions in some cases.
Well, yeah, and that goes kind of to that Venezuela example. What's the truth behind that? We still haven't heard much about what's happening with the Epstein files, and we haven't heard anything about the Charlie Kirk assassination. I mean, what's going on with all of that?
Yeah.
I guess when you have a lot of lies and then people back it up and there's nothing done against that or counter it, then it becomes normal. And when it becomes normal, everybody gonna accept it. And that become the truth.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that you might consider it the quote unquote new normal, but part of the problem is that there's these power levers that are being exercised that prevent some of the journalism and the news media from covering it to the extent that they used to previously, and that's being exercised in the form of lawsuits and denial of let's say funding. There's all kinds of ways that this administration is really exercising their lever of power to the degree where you have a lot of silencing taking place, right? So in previous years, people would, journalists would uncover things and actually report on it, and the levers of power were, I think, a little bit more balanced. But I think we're in a phase right now where the lever of power is really kind of lopsided.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why you see a lot of rallies today. Like every weekend there's a rally of some kind.
Yeah.
No King's Day or no Dictator's Day.
Yeah.
All of that happens because I feel like for people, that's their only recourse that they have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their way of expressing their true feelings.
Mm-hmm. I guess journalism will be a powerful position, uh, especially if you have a lot of followers and whatever you say, you can make that uh, as accepted. So I think we give little credit to journalism. I mean journalists, because they dig out what is the truth or somehow they do their background check, and that becomes people will start following. So a journalist can be a very powerful voice. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a recent report that was issued. I think Bert knows about this one. The News
Yeah, in
Desert.
fact, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, News Desert. So
Yeah.
Hawaii Institute for Public Affairs recently issued a report on Hawaii's news desert. News desert meaning not enough news. Because if you look at the Star Advertiser, there aren't that many journalists in the newsroom anymore, like before, even like 20 years ago. And so the amount of news has diminished. And what that means is people can't be as civically engaged anymore. So that's why you have voter apathy. People don't turn out to vote because, what's the point? They may not feel their voice makes a difference. And yet we have to protect, freedom of this press and speech while we still can. um, and value those things.
Yeah, I guess money speaks. That's why we have only one newspaper in our town, uh, in Honolulu. Yeah. Although there's some small uh, media like that's Civil Beat,
Yeah.
and there's some good journalists in there come out with some good story, but they don't reach enough people. Yeah.
Mm.
But they have some very interesting and it reveal things that is not printed in our Star Advertiser. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
we should have more of those though.
So I put the link in the chat for the News Desert project, and I also put it in the content resources for this week, and I also added so Nathan, I have access to something called Lamaku, and I drop a lot of the sort of the links and the resources for the class to read if they're interested, and I'll put the video of this lecture in there as well. Now, so if anybody wants to refer back to it, I put a couple of things in here. The News Desert one. I did also put a Bernie Sanders pretty long 5 minute. I think it was might have been even more 5 minute talk on the threats from AI, and I thought it was a pretty good kind of talking head narrative around his concern about AI. I also, Jim, this is because you helped bring this topic up about internet shutdowns, and the Internet Society also put a policy brief together about internet shutdowns as it pertains to governments, taking the liberty of shutting the internet down in their respective countries because they perhaps don't want what's being said to be spread, or they don't want movements to take to gain momentum as a result of the technology, so they shut the internet down. So there's a policy paper about that by the Internet Society. So I hope people in the class kind of appreciate all the things that are going on, and Nathan, you bring to attention the work that you do and what needs to happen if you really want to be in this business. Style is definitely a thing. Learning how to write, learning how to read, learning how to be, sort of discern the topic that you're now becoming let's say expert on. As a strategic communications person, you got to almost be an expert on all the things that people want, to hire you for, right? So any of the companies that hire you, you almost have to be now an expert in their particular field as well. So, there's I think a lot of opportunity, but again, there's a lot of things to consider that you have to build your expertise up over the course of time. So, I think that's good advice for everybody. Any kind of last questions for Nathan? Okay, well, seeing none, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Nathan, mahalo for being my special guest speaker today. And if you wanna shoot me your deck, I can also put it up in our resources so people can take a look at it. And then, like I said earlier, we'll have a couple of lectures next week. Just these are kind of winding down already, so we'll have a summary on Tuesday, and then another short discussion about the Good Jobs Challenge for Thursday. And then finals week is on the 15th, and I'll be finishing up all the reviews of the speaker surveys over the course of that week. And then I will then pretty much put it together in terms of the results from all of your surveys as well as the quizzes, and come up with grades, during the course of that week, the week of the 15th. Okay, so mahalo everybody.
Okay.
See you guys here next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you,
Email.
Nate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bert.